Among the nicest stories of the 2023 Rugby World Cup is the story of the Portuguese team. Participating in the tournament for only the second time in their history after their appearance in 2007, nobody expected anything from them. A mostly inexperienced squad in a pool filled with strong teams, the panorama was not looking good for Os Lobos. However, little did we know about Portuguese heart and temperament. In the end, these group of players surprised everyone and made their country proud. Let's take a look at Portugal's 2023 Rugby World Cup story.
To the captain! No, he can't!
The Portuguese national rugby team named Os Lobos, which stands for the Wolves, showed itself to the world for the very first time when they had the possibility to play the 2007 Rugby World Cup, their first appearance in the most important tournament of the sport. Their campaign started years prior, playing the European qualification tournament to seek for a place in the ultimate competition. Eventually, after playing a lot of matches, Portugal had the chance to play Georgia for Europe's third spot in the 2007 Rugby World Cup. Unfortunately, they lost in Tbilisi and drew in Lisbon, which gave Georgia the qualification. Portugal would have to go to the repechage stage. So next up, they had to win 2 rounds of repechage in a home and away format to make it into the tournament. Their first opponent was Morocco, who they narrowly beat in both matches. Then it was all to play for in the second and final round for a spot in the World Cup against Uruguay. Portugal beat Uruguay 12-5 in Lisbon and then had to play in Montevideo, where they lost by 18-12. Adding both matches' scores, that was 24-23 for Portugal, who achieved their first ever Rugby World Cup qualification. These two teams had also faced in the 1999 repechage, where Uruguay comfortably beat Portugal and earned their Rugby World Cup debut. This time, things were the other way around. What was the price for their victory? A trip to France and a spot in Pool C alongside New Zealand, Scotland, Italy, and Romania. Portugal's Rugby World Cup debut in 2007 happened against Scotland. Of course, it was a very tough match against one of Europe's top teams. It was a defeat for Portugal by 56-10. In spite of Scotland's 8 tries, Portugal managed to score a try as well in their tournament debut. It was Pedro Cavallo, one of the team's wingers, who scored for Os Lobos. Next match was the toughest match out of them all, the All Blacks. While it must have been an incredible honor to play against such a historical team, the 80 minutes must have been extremely tough for the Portuguese team, who conceded a whopping 16 tries. The final score was 108-13, which is the 5th biggest points margin to date in the tournament history. Just as they did against Scotland, they also managed to score a try. This time, it was prop Rui Cordeiro. The following week, it was time to face another European team. It was Italy this time, who scored 3 tries to beat Portugal by 31-5. Once again, Portugal managed to score a try. This time, lock David Penalva had the honor. Finally, Portugal had to come play for the 4th week in a row against another European team, probably the most accessible match of them all, Romania. It was probably the most anticipated match for the Portuguese squad, as this was their only realistic opportunity of potentially getting a win. Unfortunately, they did not have a week off until the end of the tournament, which meant they had a lot of physical wear and tear by the time of this match. They left it all out there, but did not manage to get the win. They lost by 4 points with a 14-10 scoreboard. However, in spite of the loss, they gained their first point in a Rugby World Cup, a defensive bonus point. They also scored a try in this match by hooker Joaquim Ferreira. Basically, this was a decent World Cup for Portugal's expectations. They managed to score a try in every single match and gain a bonus point in their last performance. However, they were still far from the level needed to compete properly in the event. After their first participation in 2007, one would expect to see Portugal in the following editions of the tournament. However, this was not quite the case. Portugal did not even qualify through the regional qualification tournament for the 2011 Rugby World Cup, so of course they didn't make it to the final qualification tournament. For the following World Cup to be played in 2015, Portugal did not automatically qualify for the final qualifying tournament, as they hadn't even participated in the previous edition, so they had to go through the European qualifiers again. Unfortunately, they didn't manage to do so for the second year in a row, they weren't even near qualifying for the Rugby World Cup. Same story happened during the 2019 qualifying process. However, after they lost their opportunity to qualify for the 2019 World Cup, things started getting a bit better. For example, in 2019, they got their biggest win ever, 93-0 against the Czech Republic. Between March 2021 and March 2022, the European qualification tournament for the 2023 Rugby World Cup took place. 6 teams, not qualified for their performances in the 2019 World Cup, competed for 2 direct qualification spots in the World Cup and 1 spot for the final qualification tournament. Each team played each other in a double round-robin tournament to determine the 2 qualifiers and the repechage spot. Portugal ended 3rd in the European qualifiers behind Georgia and Romania, having the possibility to compete for the last available spot in the final qualification tournament held in Dubai against Hong Kong, Kenya, and the USA. After comfortably beating Hong Kong and Kenya in a hair-raising end of the tournament, Portugal managed to secure their second-ever qualification to a Rugby World Cup after a last-minute penalty in their match against USA that resulted in a 16-16 draw. With this score, they won the tournament on points difference, earning the final spot at the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Once again in France after 16 years, Portugal had the possibility to play their second Rugby World Cup and show themselves to the world. After qualifying through repechage, they were assigned a spot in Pool C alongside Wales, Australia, Fiji, and Georgia. Their first match was against the group's strongest team, Wales. Despite being a very tough match on paper, the Portuguese team put in a very strong performance. They ended up losing by 28-8, but managed to score a try. It was lock Nicolas Martins. Wales, on the other hand, scored 4 tries by Luis Rees-Zammit, Dewey Lake, Jack Morgan, and Talupe Faletau. Next match after a week off was against Georgia. This was Portugal's first real opportunity in the tournament to put in a strong performance and obtain a favorable result. Trailing by 13-0 a few minutes before the end of the first half, they managed to score a try by the means of winger Rafael Storti to go 13-5 down into the break. After the break, they scored 2 penalties and another try by Rafael Storti to go up 18-13 with 20 minutes to go. Just 2 minutes before the end of the match, Georgia scored a try which they failed to convert, leaving the score at 18-18. In the very last play of the match, Portugal gained a penalty which, if converted, would give them the win. However, Nuno Sousa Guedes missed the posts and the match ended up on a draw. In spite of the disappointment for the lost opportunity, this was Portugal's best ever result and a great showing to the world. Next up was Australia, the other tougher match on paper. Putting on another very solid performance as they did against Wales, they lost again, this time by 20 points, 34-14. They started ahead in the scoreboard after a try scored by center Pedro Betancourt and converted by Samuel Marquez, but the Wallabies ended up being a bit too much. Finally, their last opponent in the group was Fiji. Portugal had no chances to qualify, but this was indeed a great chance to show themselves to the world again and to make their nation proud. And that's exactly what they did. Fiji instead was playing for their qualification. They needed to obtain just a point to make it through. But it wouldn't be an easy task as some people expected. This was a very close match that could have gone one way or another. Eventually being 23-17 down with 2 minutes remaining, Portugal managed to score a try and put themselves in a situation at which they only had to convert the try to win the match in the very last minute. And this time, unlike what happened against Georgia, they did. Samuel Marquez scored the conversion, and Portugal won the biggest match of their history and first in a Rugby World Cup. In spite of the result, Fiji still managed to qualify, obtaining a defensive bonus point. This way, Portugal's 2023 Rugby World Cup came to an end, but what a month it was. No one probably expected them to obtain the results they got. They showed the world they deserve to be respected. While they might not be the best team, attitude and pride for their nation are 2 things that Portuguese players don't negotiate. Having had such an extraordinary campaign, a lot of questions arise regarding Portugal's rugby future. Is this the start of a new era of Portuguese rugby? Well, if they can build on what they've achieved in the maximum stage, then we will definitely be talking about Os Lobos more in the future. But only time will tell.